with liberty and justice for all. This morning, across this great nation, young people in small towns and big city campuses, white, black, brown, Asian, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jew, immigrant or not, queer or not, young people everywhere will put their hands over their hearts and say these words in the Pledge of Allegiance: with liberty and justice for all. For all. It was 1892, just 30 years after the Civil War. A minister, Francis Bellamy, was assigned to write a pledge that would be used in schools nationwide. He wanted to keep it simple. He wanted to stress, as President Lincoln had years before, that the Union was indivisible. And so he wrote, with liberty and justice for all. Of course, this idea was not new in 1892. It was the basis of our nation's founding, that we are all created equal. On paper, the United States is a nation built for all. And we pledge, as some of our students hear daily, some of them sitting, some of them kneeling in protest, that this is a nation for all. But right now, it isn't. And truthfully, it never has been. I could say that America's economic and political systems are fundamentally broken, and I have. But that would suggest that they were once working. These systems have never worked for all of us. The founders declared that all men are created equal. The framers decided that enslaved human beings were 3/5 a person. Our government was made by wealthy white men, for wealthy white men. This is still a nation for wealthy white men. And this is still a nation for some, not all. And when you look at our economy, it is crystal clear. America's 20 richest people earn more wealth than 152 million Americans combined. Corporate profits are at an all-time high. 64 million Americans and a disproportionate number of people of color earn less than $15 an hour. 26 states have made it harder for people to join together in a union. 9 in 10 workers don't have a union, and about half of all workers are excluding from joining unions at all. Jennifer Berry doesn't have a union. She works at a McDonald's here in Milwaukee. She has a college degree, and she wants to be a manager one day. But right now, she earns less than $10 an hour. The CEO of McDonald's earns $10,000 an hour. This is not an accident. This is the system working. Big corporations have rigged it. How? They buy politicians through their campaign contributions, and they expect those same politicians to deliver, to give them tax cuts, and the politicians deliver, to prevent the minimum wage from going up, and the politicians deliver, to stop working people from organizing, and the politicians deliver. our democracy has become a personal concierge service for corporate America. Because if there's one thing that corporations understand, it's that you don't pay unless you're getting something in return. And right now, we have a president who wants it like that. We have Republicans in the Senate and the House. They want it like that. We have a Supreme Court and federal judges. They want it like that. We have CEOs and corporate lobbyists who want it like that. They don't want to fix the system. It's their system. It's by them, it's for them, and it's working for them. But let's be honest. It's working for some Democrats, too. It's working for those Democrats who rely on wealthy donors to get elected. It's working for those Democrats who don't understand the daily struggle of working people. It's working for those Democrats who refuse to understand the reach of racism. These Democrats often tell us that we have to choose between economic justice and racial justice. In doing so, they embrace a nation for some. But we were promised liberty and justice for all. We deserve liberty and justice for all. And it's time we demand it. You know, in my opinion, one of the most vital parts of the First Amendment is the right of the people to peaceably assemble. That freedom to join together, to organize, is a fundamental American value grounded in our Constitution. And today, in the age of the individual, it's especially important to remember. Because today, we're sold the myth of the individual. The idea that any one person can do anything. Really? And if you can't, you are on your own. That's why they want to divide us. That's why they attack union rights and pit working people against each other and blame everything on immigrants and people of color just for pretty much everything. That's why they attack progressive women leaders of color. They know we're weaker when they keep us apart. The truth is that Jennifer Berry, one person making minimum wage at a company like McDonald's, the second largest employer in the world, has no power to change anything in her life and working conditions, at least not on her own. But when we assemble as a group, as an organization, as a union, that's a different story. When we assemble, we have the power to fight for wages and working conditions. When we assemble, we have the power to take on climate change at full scale and full speed. When we assemble, we have the power to make sure that Black communities can live free from police brutality. And immigrant communities can live free from deportation. So that our children of every race can grow up realizing their hopes and dreams. When we assemble, we have the power to put an end to the lifelong debt that goes along with a college degree in this country. When we assemble, we have the power to make sure that our children's schools are safe and fully funded, and that all of our family members can go to the doctor without having to worry about what it affords to cost or what it costs. When we assemble, we have the power to win universal, affordable childcare for our precious little ones, and universal long-term care for our aging loved ones. When we assemble, we don't have to choose. We don't have to choose between Black Lives Matter and immigrant justice. We don't have to choose. We don't have to choose between health care and affordable college. We don't have to choose between workers' rights and climate action. We can win it all if we join together, if we build power together. And the best way to do that is by joining together in a union, so that there's a seat at the table for every worker. 6 years ago, no one thought it was possible to make a $15 minimum wage happen. But 200 fast food workers in New York City went on strike and demanded $15 and a union. And now look where we are. Airport workers in Denver won 15. New York and New Jersey airport workers won $19 an hour. Big companies raised their minimum wage to $15. Amazon, Target, Costco, Bank of America, Facebook, and many more. $15 an hour is now the law of the land in New York and in California. And just last month, the House of Representatives voted to pass a $15 national minimum wage. Nationwide, this movement has put $70 billion in the pockets of 24 million Americans. $15 was the first goal of this movement, but a union is the second. Because a union is what makes a raise stick. A union is what makes change stick. That's why we need unions for all. Every worker, every fast food worker, every hospital worker, every airport worker, every freelancer, every contractor, every single person deserves the power to make sure our economy and democracy works for them. And when that happens, our economy and democracy will work for everyone. We're not waiting anymore, we're doing. We're not asking anymore, we're telling. We are demanding that every single working person in America, no matter what job they do or where they work, has the opportunity to join together in a union. Now, let me tell you what that means. Number one, unions for all means bringing workers together by geography, industry, or occupation to a table with companies to negotiate for better jobs and working conditions. Where this is happening, it's working. Take New York. In 2015, 2 years after the fast food workers went on strike, the governor convened a wage board with workers, industry representatives, and public officials all at the same table. They had a single job: to make sure that the cooks and cashiers working in the fast food industry allowed them to live a life of dignity and respect. Within a few months, the fast food workers in that state won the first industry-wide $15 minimum wage for 200,000 fast food workers all across the state of New York. Bargaining by industry, where multiple companies sit across a table with the largest employers in their industry with workers to negotiate wages and benefits, is standard practice in almost every developed country in the world. It should happen here too, in the United States of America. It should happen for people like Miko Clark, a patient care tech at a hospital in Chicago. After 15 years on the job, Miko is regularly told not to come to work or to go home, which means choosing between cutting her pay or taking some of her paid time off. On top of that, Miko and her coworkers are unable to deliver all the care their patients need because of short staffing at the hospital. Miko knows that life would be better for her family and community, and that it would be very different if Governor Pritzker and Mayor Lightfoot took a cue from New York and brought the entire citywide hospital industry to a table with workers like her. There are 95,000 hospital workers in the city of Chicago. Imagine the power they could build with Miko if they were able to stand together, demand adequate staffing, fair scheduling, and good benefits with one powerful voice. Imagine what a change that would mean for all those 95,000 workers and their patients. Number two, unions for all means allowing state and local government to find new ways to give workers more power. Federal labor laws were written 80 years ago. They're outdated and broken. But the federal government tells states, you're stuck with those laws. And states tell cities, you're stuck with those laws. But when policymakers like the governor of New York figure out how to innovate, how to give workers not just a voice, but real power, millions and millions of workers will be better off. Federal labor law should be the floor, the foundation that workers need to advocate for themselves, not the ceiling that holds workers down. We need to allow cities and states to innovate so that states like Colorado can pass labor laws that would make it easier for workers to join together in a union to negotiate higher wages and benefits. That would make a huge difference for Tagelsir Mohammed, a wheelchair attendant and security officer who works as a contractor at Denver Airport. Tagelsir works 2 jobs for 70 hours a week so he can support his wife and daughters, because one paycheck just isn't enough to pay the rent. He dreams of being able to send his daughter to college. If workers like Tagelsir had the power of a union, sitting at a table with the governor and the airport contractors and the airport workers, that would change. Airport workers could be paid a living wage and have a regular work week, and Tagelsir could help his daughter fulfill her dream to become a doctor. 3, unions for all means putting our taxpayer dollars to work for good union jobs. Every single government contract, every grant, every tax subsidy should require that workers get paid $15 an hour and have a real opportunity to form a union. So when we fight to expand Medicare and Medicaid, we have to fight for every single healthcare worker to have a real opportunity to join a union. And we can't just fight for funding to improve our nation's airports and public infrastructure. We have to fight for funding that requires good union jobs on these projects. Every budget proposal, every policy should be judged on whether it builds power for working people. That's what happened here in Milwaukee at the Fiserv Forum. Yeah. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. When the Bucks decided to build a new arena, the community made sure that the project would reflect public values and got the Bucks to agree that all the arena's service and hospitality workers would be guaranteed 15 and a union. Yeah. Which is also how Troy Brewer went from making minimum wage, $7.25 an hour, to $13 an hour, which will soon be $14.50, and then $15 an hour. Troy has worked in the restaurant and food service industry for 30 years, but it's only now that he's one of the workers that have won a union at the Fiserv Forum that Troy knows he has a voice. He knows he'll be treated fairly with dignity and respect. He knows he'll be able to provide for his wife and 3 children. He knows with this newfound power that he's gotten from joining together with other workers from impoverished neighborhoods in Milwaukee that anything is possible. Now, Troy wants families and friends in other industries to have a voice too. And not just in Milwaukee. Troy wants people like Kim Thomas, a home care worker from South Carolina, to have the same voice in her future. Kim takes care of the elderly and those in hospice care, sometimes working 16-hour shifts for just $8 or $9 an hour, with no benefits, not even health insurance. When her gallbladder erupted, she didn't want to go to the hospital because she knew she couldn't afford it. Imagine if the home care workers in South Carolina could experience what happened here in Milwaukee for the Bucks Arena employees. Imagine how Kim's life would change if she had a seat at the table. Imagine if every home care worker in all of South Carolina had a union and a seat at the table. Finally, number 4, unions for all means putting good union jobs at the center of any major effort to fix the economy. Healthcare for all should include unions for every healthcare worker. The Green New Deal should include unions for all clean energy workers. College for all should include unions for everybody that works on a campus, such as Josh Braley, who's been teaching as an adjunct professor at Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Florida, for 15 years. Josh has a PhD in religion from Vanderbilt University, and he is a part-time Presbyterian minister, but he still makes less than $15 an hour. It's difficult for him and his wife to support his 2 kids on his wages, which is why Josh is fighting for the union. Every progressive policy should include unions for all. Because unions for all will build the power to help us win all progressive policies. It's been said there's power in the union, and I feel it here in this room. It's the power of hospital workers and airport workers and fast food workers and home care workers. It's the power of janitors and security officers and government workers and adjunct professors and child care providers. Yes, there is power in a union, but that power isn't just for union members. That power is for all of us. When those fast food workers won 15, I remember them putting their elbows on the table and telling me, Okay, now we got the power to end stop and frisk in our communities. Now we got the power to end deportation in our neighborhoods. Now we can take on everything that's wrong in our lives and make it right once and for all. That's the power of a union. And that's exactly why some politicians and corporate CEOs are doing everything in their power to stop working people from joining together in unions. And that's why we need every worker in America to join us in building even more power for working people. With unions for all, we have the power to right wrongs for all. With unions for all, we have the power to raise wages for all. With unions for all, we have the power to unrig the economy for all. With unions for all, we'll have the power to resurrect our cities and communities for all. When we win unions for all, we'll have the power to hold politicians accountable to us all. And when we win unions for all, we'll have the power to demand justice for women, for immigrants, for people of color, for us all. Which brings me to the 2020 election. There are more than 20 candidates running for president. Every day, one of them is putting out a new policy or new proposal. Some want to create new public benefits, new safety net programs, and these are good, but they're part of what we're fighting for. Some want to tax the rich and large corporations to pay for these plans, and that's important too. After all, a company like Amazon pays zero in taxes, maybe the most powerful company in the world. Something is very wrong. But many of these policies and proposals won't change the balance of power in America. They won't change who gets to call the shots. The wealthy are going to find a way to protect their wealth, often at any cost. That's why we need to put working people in charge. Because when workers organize, we can make bigger change. And when we organize, we can make that change stick. Many of the 2020 presidential candidates have been out on the strike lines with fast food workers, and that's good. But to truly transform the lives of fast food workers, those candidates have got to commit to put McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King at a national bargaining table and make them bargain with 4 million fast food workers to improve wages, hours, and working conditions for every fast food worker in this nation. Many of the 2020 presidential candidates talk about banning right-to-work laws or tweaking the rules a little bit to make it easier for workers to join unions. But to truly improve the lives of working people, we need those candidates to think even bigger. We need them to make it possible for all workers to join together across employers, across industries, and across geographies. Not workplace by the dozens, but by the hundreds of thousands and millions. We need workers who've been historically excluded from labor law to be included. So today, we are asking every presidential candidate to put unions for all at the center of their economic platform. That means committing to 4 things. Number 1, bringing corporations, government, and workers together at industry-wide bargaining tables to negotiate better wages, benefits, and better lives for all working people. Number 2, to allow states to innovate and go above and beyond broken federal labor law. Number 3, to ensure that every public dollar is used to create good union jobs and that every federal worker and contractor has at least $15 an hour and the opportunity to join a union. And 4, putting good union jobs at the center of every effort to fix the economy. If candidates cannot commit to these 4 things, they cannot count on our support. Because one place where the power of working people is clear is in politics. It's working people who spend every weekend knocking doors. It's working people who spend every evening making phone calls. It's working people who donate whatever's left in their paychecks after they pay the bills. It's not candidates who win elections, it's working people who do. And if you don't believe me, ask Tony Evers. He defeated Scott Walker, the worst governor in Wisconsin history. He defeated Scott Walker thanks to working people. Ask Wanda Lavender in Milwaukee, who helped get out the vote for Evers, even while juggling 6 kids, a job at Popeyes, and a second job at a daycare. Or ask Precious Crowley, a mother of 3 who voted in 1918 for the first time. She knew it was the only way to win the health care that her daughter needed after a cancer diagnosis. And Precious didn't just vote. She knocked on doors and organized voters all the way through Election Day. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of progressive candidates running right now support workers and support unions. They jump at the chance to speak at union meetings. They talk about their parents who were union members. They talk about how they'll defend our right to organize. And that's all important. But what they don't seem to get is that the right to organize doesn't exist anymore. And just like the right to vote barely exists, and just like the right to an equal education is a cruel joke, and just like the right to organize, well, there's nothing left of it. Federal labor laws were written 80 years ago. And on top of that, like our nation's founding documents, those laws excluded a whole lot of people. They excluded domestic workers and farm workers. They excluded care workers and service workers. They excluded all the industries dominated by women and people of color. And the racist and sexist consequences of those laws live on. Those laws were incomplete when they were written, and they are completely useless today. A smaller share of workers in unions today before this law was written. Let me say that again. The very laws that were supposedly written to make it easier for working people to join together in unions are so broken, are so defective, that many more workers had an easier time joining together in unions before those laws were ever written. We need progressive candidates to understand that the right to join a union is a fundamental American value. We need progressive candidates to understand what it means for working people. We need progressive candidates to understand how working people struggle while the wealthy soar. We need progressive candidates to understand that when working people are in a union, we too can soar. We need progressive candidates to understand that's why we as working people are determined to build our power. That will be my mission from now until the Iowa caucuses to the November 3rd, 2020 election. To get these candidates to understand us, to get these candidates to stand with us, to get these candidates to demand with us unions for all. In January 2021, when the next president takes the oath of office, she or he will assume an incredible amount of power. But let me be clear, the power of the presidency comes from the people, and it must be used for the people, and it must be shared with the people. And no matter who takes the oath, we're going to demand that it is shared with the people. I want to conclude where I began, with the Pledge of Allegiance, with liberty and justice for all. Too often, we've been a country of contradictions. We've said one thing and we've meant another. All men are created equal, but not women. We, the people, but not people of color, with liberty and justice for all, but not immigrants. It's time we hold this nation to its words. It's time that we hold this nation to its ideals. It's time that we hold this nation to its promise. And I can promise you this, right now in 2019, when we have a president, Republicans in Congress, the Supreme Court, CEOs and lobbyists who wake up every day thinking about how to put more power in the hands of corporations, in the hands of white, wealthy men, the only way to defend immigrants is to build the power of working people. The only way to lift up communities of color is to build the power of working people. The only way to save our planet is to build the power of working people. And the only way to build the power of working people is for us to have unions for all. And the only way to have liberty and justice for all is to have unions for all. Let's get to work, brothers and sisters. Thank you very much.